Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome, welcome. Hopefully you all had a fantastic day of trading so far this morning. And going into this afternoon with bright eyes and bushy tails, ready to rock and roll. Welcome to the daily afternoon market recap and offering overview. I'll also take a look and see if we can find any S&P scalps along the way and all that fun stuff. Over the next, 30 to 60 minutes or so, we're going to cover what took place today, the trade setups that presented themselves per the rules outlined in the Day Trading Academy and VIP trade plans. I'm going to talk about every setup that presented itself today, but remember, not all patterns and setups are created equal. The ones that I'm going to cover here don't use common sense as a filter at all. Going long in a massive downtrend or shorting at the bottom of a range, totally fine. You get the idea. This is to ensure total fairness. That way all of the patterns and everything are all done together and there's no cherry picking. Don't forget, before we kick things off, smash the like button, let the YouTube algorithms know what's up, and while you're at it, hit subscribe too. That way you don't miss the next video that we do. Of course, we go live every single day at 1300 Eastern. Well, this will be the last week that we do, actually, this all the way until Friday, and then we go into the holidays. Holy cow. If you want to hang out with me and the rest of the VIPs for the entire U.S. morning session, you can register for a 1-week trial to our VIP live trade room, and that way you can see how we trade the markets in real time while they're moving during the New York Stock Exchange Open. Plus, when you register, you also get the 24-page guide on risk reward, which I think is a mind bender if you haven't looked at it in that way before. And then along with that, you also have the ability to schedule a 30-minute phone call with me to discuss any questions that you've got about becoming a member and all that fun stuff. And plus, the best part is it's totally free. There's no credit cards to register or anything like that. So make sure to get on the calendar before we go into the holiday break. Otherwise, it's going to be a couple weeks until we can have a chat. If you have any questions about what we offer, what we have available for you, or anything in between, if there's a chart that you want me to look at, or a trade or a market, we do Q&A time after the charts, so that we'll definitely get you covered. So with all that out of the way, let's take a look at what all happened today, and with our old buddy the NASDAQ and a few other things here. Obviously, the first thing, let me get this out of the way, pop that up there. There we go. Looking at the big picture here, we can see that there are 3 setups and there were 3 losses. It was just one of those kind of days. Now, the interesting thing is that every single one of them actually worked to some degree. And you'll notice, if I put my arrows away, you'll see where those setups were. Let me zoom in a little bit closer. And we'll see that the first area is pushing downward in a large press move. Well, I mean, look at this thing. This thing just collapsed. 9 o'clock hit, and this thing just fell through the floor. And after the market kind of fell apart on that drive lower, we ran into a situation that's, they were interested, obviously, and I'm sure buyers might have been interested up here. I'm also sure that those buyers probably got dumpstered on the way down, and they get a little bit stuck. So when we've got that slide down, it's obvious that the sellers are in control, and they're sliding aggressively lower, so shorts make a lot of sense. And again, this doesn't use any common sense as a filter, but shorting directly into the bottom of a wedge is probably not the best spot in the world. And if you notice, the trade that we actually took in that area was still off of that zone, but more derived as a scalp because, kind of understand that that's a horrible idea to short directly into that. But there is a lot of reason to believe the sellers will have some follow through. And after a little bit of wiggling around and hustle bustle and messing around, and they finally did rotate their way through. Once the market finally pushed down aggressively and worked its way lower, by the way, it's cataloged as a -1R because technically that was a loss. It did hit the stop area, although, again, common sense goes a long way. Either way, we've got a really, really big flush to the downside. And if we look at this structurally, we've got a really, really nice wedge, beautiful wedge, and it breaks out lower, which is fine. There's not really a directional bias on this wedge. So when we break out lower, a lot of sellers are going to be looking for continuation. They're going to be shorting along with the move, trying to get it to go. And then it ends up not working and rinsing them all the way up into that previous swing high where a lot of their stops probably were. Took them all out. Tasty. Rolled all the way back down to the lows again. Vindictive market. Once we had that rotation, bulls tried getting a cycle back to the upside, and, again, it didn't work out at all. They found a little bit of a bounce point, got a little bit more momentum, and failed. If we look at that same zone, there's a lot of different ways to approach it. There's the initial entry point, and then buying into the dip for a completionary move on up when you realize that it's not working. So again, one of 2 different ways. There are a lot of different approaches, but as far as the overall setup per pattern goes, it's a -1R. It didn't work even a little bit. It just got totally ran over. And when it finally decided to turn back around again, it just left the station. Like, didn't even give an opportunity. They had this little herc move up there, and then just sank all the way through the floor. Little bitty, whoop, I don't know what happened there. Little bitty L1 pullback, drove all the way down, couldn't even hit an L1, finally hit L1 again. So a lot of sellers are going to be looking for, maybe we get some follow through here to get this thing going. And, well, it kind of worked and kind of didn't. We had the sellers that held pretty nicely, but the problem was that entry for the shorts is above the moving average cluster, and there's a lot of issues with it. So when it cycles back down, that's when it makes a lot more interesting potential for the bulls to cycle it back down again and get things going. Here again, it's shorting into the base of a range. There's a lot of red flags here. Again, common sense isn't included. This is another -1R. But if we utilize our brain a little bit, realistically, it makes sense that we have a situation that tries getting to go. It fails, reduction back at break even, utilizing the excess to make up the difference on that secondary slide lower. Again, a lot of different ways to approach it, but using some common sense, selling directly into a major point of interest is kind of tough. Now, where are these giant thick green lines coming from, you may ask? Those are actually from the larger perspective. If we go out to the 15-minute chart, this is where swing buyers are going to be looking for a continuation. So when we get a dip down into this area, this is where 2-to-1s, where 3-to-1s, where they're all able to get in and fit a target up into the highs. So they've got a little bit of flexibility and it fits the risk. Well, they got taken out to the tick just to hand their contracts over to Goldman. They gobbled them up like it was going out of style, and now it's right back up to where it was before. So we've got to ask ourselves, what really is this? We've got to kind of revert back to before the drop and look at what happened at the top. That looks horrible. Okay? I mean, when we have this much back and forth resistance on the previous time around, they trap the high, lower high, 3 lower high in the sequence. Beautiful topping formation. Breaks out and flushes all the way down. Makes a new low. Now, we know in hindsight, and actually during, while it was happening, this was very likely going to be a wave 4 continuation for 5. But guess what didn't happen? They didn't finish the job. Wave 5 is still open. Now, it's gross, and it feels really kind of mean and vindictive, but welcome to the markets. When we have a clean and clear and under control kind of move on wave 2, chances are wave 4 is going to be a mess. So we have to ask ourselves, is this a messy wave 4? I've got some concerns. If we look at how long this is taking from here to here and then projecting up to there, why is this way the heck over here? It feels like we've missed something along the way. Almost as though this might be part of a larger structure and this was actually more along the lines of a different type of move altogether. It just doesn't fit or feel right, and with all of this weakness across the high and seeing further weakness across the highs, it doesn't give me the warm fuzzies for the bulls to be hanging on for anything other than 2-to-1, 3-to-1s, because that's all that makes sense. The sellers are coiling back down, they're trying to pile drive this thing lower. But, I mean, here's the thing, right? If nothing else, if they don't hold support at 16,100, what's left? Like, nothing. We've got this wedge back here that was at 15,850. Yikes. And below that, then we don't have any support. I'm sure there's a POC somewhere in around the 700s. That's a big, wide open door. So this could get nasty pretty fast. We'll see. We'll have to wait and see. Looking at the S&P and kind of seeing what's going on here, we see a very nice cycle to the downside. Beautiful momentum overall, and certainly can't be really too upset with how everything kind of kicked off. We started off the day with an inside gap down. The inside gap down led up with a monster bear bar. Huge bear bar on the first candle of the day. Second candle of the day was even bigger. So when the market starts backing up into that previous defense point, yeah, you better believe the sellers are going to try to slam that back down, and they did. Now, one big thing that we were looking at before, there were some candle gaps from the previous area. Wanted to see, were they going to hold there? Actually tried to buy there, but I didn't get filled both times. Welcome to life sometimes. Ended up sliding through, and then finally getting down to one of the biggest points that we were talking about all morning, was the break-even point of the worst short. The worst short means that it's the last bear bar in that move down, and it finally triggered underneath them, right? It's the worst possible place that they could have ever gotten short. It didn't get any worse, right? They sold the bottom. They FOMO'd in, and welcome to life. We've been there before. So what happened to them? Now, from a normal trader's perspective, they probably got stopped out somewhere inside of here, hopefully. But from a Goldman's perspective, from a JP Morgan perspective with a lot of zeros, that's going into the weekend and they probably got stuck. So going into the weekend, they don't have, I mean, they've got so many zeros. They don't have to worry about, oh no, you know, they can afford to wait. It's okay. They come back in the weekend, and after the weekend, going into Monday, we slide all the way down, right to where one tick below that bear bar is this blue line right there. That's where they were all exiting a break even. And that's where all of that back and forth took place until they finally broke through that mess. And once they broke through that mess, we have to catalog. Remember, algos only know ones and zeros, so they're still going to look for the same targets, right? Scalper's target, 1-to-1 target. Are we seeing supportive nature, resistant nature on these areas to suggest that the algos are having fun? Yeah, I would say so, right? I think that's pretty fair. Just a couple times. So obviously the algos are still in a playground and they're having fun back and forth, selling off the top, buying off the lows, and playing in the middle. But where are we in the big picture? If we go out to the larger perspective on the 60-minute and we see, well, wait a minute, we've got that 5-wave larger structure. We were talking about this with YouTube members this morning. If you're not on the YouTube member side of things, that's a join button below. We do a YouTube morning prep with all of our members for the first 20-30 minutes ahead of the Stock Exchange Open to get our game plan. And this is one of the things that we've been talking about for a while. We finally have the algos coming back, and guess what they bounced off of? Whoa! Right? What a shock. So the fact that they bounced directly off that area, again, these are things that you would expect to see happen. But the one big thing that has not happened is the major target has not been achieved. They came real close, but they never hit it. So, given the fact that we've cycled all the way back up to a new high, we're back underneath their original short break even, denoted by the POC. Looking for a cycle back down would make sense to see bouncing off scalp targets, re-upping into the short to look for a next move down to the 1-to-1 and finish the job. After that 1-to-1, that's where things might shift gears a little bit. That could flip this thing with a V-bottom all the way back up. But from this perspective, we can see that, you know, the bulls are trying. But we'll see who actually is winning the fight right now. At the moment, the NASDAQ is continuing to cycle the market to the downside and holding its... Oops. That's not what I wanted. Okay. I just deleted all my lines, all my work. Perfect. Anyway, let me see. Can I get that back? That's about there. All charts make this big, thick, and bubbly. Ooh, lordy. Pop that guy down there. There we go. Okay. Got him back. Roughly. It was around there. I didn't mean to delete that, but oh well, I deleted everything. As far as the continuation phase to the downside goes, the NASDAQ is obviously cycling very, very nicely. If we look at it from the top all the way down, they started off with this little back and forth, very nice kind of wedge formation breakdown, aggressive breakdown. After the breakdown took place, we can see that the farthest they were able to pull back was an L2. They backed off a lot of times, but that's all they were able to get was an L2. And finally made another new low, hit another L2. And then along the way, we hit another new pullback and all the way down to another L2. This is the third one in the sequence now. Also, a previous swing high trap. Man, do I love those. Little bit awkward because it's above the moving average cluster. But again, as we continue back down, we've got all of those L2s screaming to the downside, but a lot of congestion. A lot of traders, assumably, will be trying to buy in this. Right? They're looking for the rotation up, waiting for the falling resistance, waiting for something to get going. It never did. But if we look at this move from a volume perspective all the way down, it looks as though the majority of longs built their positions around 16,311 quarter. Now, we can ask ourselves, well, have they been satisfied? If we go down to the bottom and go all the way up to the POC, we can ask ourselves, is there anything telling us that the algos might have responded to that area? Yup, check mark. All right, good. Good to know. Cool. All right, so the algos obviously got their scalping target. Like market if touch to the tick, perfect, but they got their scalping target. If we're looking at this to the downside, did the shorts have their targets achieved? Was there a response at their targets? Yes. Right? So we're seeing both sides have been satisfied. All the way down to the 1-to-1, which is kind of buried inside of this line here. But as we continue lower, what's the next objective? Well, guess what's hanging out just a little bit further down? Whoops. Is the 2-to-1. Right there. Looks like they front ran it a little bit. You know? But, I mean, that's why it's bouncing there, because that's where they're taking profit. They're not just taking profit in one spot. Remember, we're talking potentially hundreds of contracts. They've got to scale their way out. 5 contracts, 5 contracts, 5 contracts. You get the idea. Now the sellers need to try to hold it underneath this. This is the break point of the larger perspective. If they get back above that, then it's kind of game over. Hey, Ace, how's it going? Good afternoon. Welcome, welcome. Hopefully you've had a good day so far. Looking for some halfway decent continuation for the downside. Sellers are still putting the pressure on. The S&P is also looking relatively strong. If we, again, look at the larger perspective, all the resistances, man, just a scooch higher, just a little bit. It's right there. Just a couple ticks. So we'll see if they get there. Yeah, you can throw questions in whenever you want, Ace. Yep. The afternoon, after we go over all of the setups and everything that took place through the day, I'm just kind of keeping an eye out for some S&P scalps, see if we can get that point a day, keeps the JOB away, and yeah, answer any questions or anything like that, knock yourself out. That's what it's for. Market haven't... Piper, what are you doing? Sorry, I don't know what my dog's doing. Anyway. Really, really nice continuation phase to the downside. We also have a very near miss on the top. It's an L5. If there was an L6, that would be one. Deep into the move. It's a selfish question. Are you streaming in the morning before the open anymore? The streaming that I do before the open is for YouTube members. So the join button underneath the stream, that in the morning we go over the first 20 to 30 minutes while we create our game plan. That's what I was talking about a little bit earlier. That's the only, aside from VIPs, I have the live trade room open all day for VIPs, which goes from 9 a.m. to noon. Usually like 11:30 to noon these days, because it's a little bit, you know, going into the holidays. But on the YouTube side for free, like open to the public kind of thing, that's what I'm using the afternoon for, as both a trade review and a way for a lot of other people who maybe have morning jobs and can't break away from that to have an opportunity to see what's going on too. So I had to spoil, yeah, exactly. But I still wanted to make sure that we were, you know, on YouTube. We still had an open session and all of that, so I wanted to do that in the afternoon for any questions and all of that fun stuff too. So S&P possibly, well, not possibly anymore, S&P going bull engulfing, trying to get a rotation back to the upside. The actual resistance formed a bit further up, but if we're looking at this overall cycle from the bottom, let's just go from the top to the bottom first. Ugh, man, they're bouncing smack off that POC right now. All right, so we've got to ask ourselves, are the bulls, are they getting their objectives? Are we seeing any responses at logical points where bulls may be taking their profit? Right? So this long on a bull engulfing right now looks okay, but now that we know what's going on, that's in a terrible spot. That's a really, really challenging location for that to try to fire off. We'll see if they're able to get going back again, but this engulfing bull bar is it's very interesting. On the S&P, I'm curious, if we go all the way up to the top, the sellers haven't hit objectives yet. That'd be back down to the previous range lows around 46.57. We still got some more downward momentum on the table that could cause trouble for the S&P a little bit. Although, nice bull bar. Maybe. Hang on now. Uh-oh. Yep, there you go. Ooh, and a little gap right at the close there. So we've got a bull engulfing candle, a lot of support. In a previous candle swing, the everything gap, actually. There's gaps all over the place inside there. Nice little support zone. See if the bulls want to take this back to the upside. I've got some concerns. I mean, look at the response at the scalp target. You know, I mean, yeah, that is a... Like we've been saying, yes, that's a long entry. Sure, possibly. But it's directly into the target. Ugh. It's got to get above that. Show us that it can actually make it happen first. Let's see if we go all the way across if anything changes. Ooh. Yeah, they definitely got to get above that. We've got some problems. Yikes. NASDAQ starting to rotate back down as well. Breaking down a little bit lower. Very nice rotation off of the L5 while it's breaking through this low. It would be pretty nice to see a substantial breakdown, like really push through the lows. S&P buyers still trying to defend. 3.5 minutes left on the candle, rejecting off of that target area to the tick. Oof. See if the NASDAQ wants to cycle back up again. But it's going to have to make a move. Probably back up at least above the 160s. S&P trying to hold support. Yikes. There's so much support underneath, though, too. Big zone of interest. We'll have to see what they want to do. The S&P is trying to creep its way back up again. Ooh, maybe not. We got some pressure. There it is. It's bare pressure. Nice little cycle. Nice little L5. Looking for a break continuation of the downside. Really got to get through this support down here.
France's Finance Minister Le Maire says that we want to see the deficit under 3% of GDP by 2027.
That is all the support underneath the low. That's not going to help. There we go. See if they can get through. Look at that response on the S&P scalp target. This is why it's so important to know where you are. I guarantee you a lot of bulls got suckered into that one. Oh, man, and they just got ripped in half. Oh. That's how you do your homework. Speaking of which, if you have no idea what we're talking about or how we are looking at these areas or staying cautious around these areas or even for what reason, check out the Day Trading Academy on SSFTG. It's 19 plus hours of video course material that we can make sure you've got everything locked and loaded and you're on the same page. That way you'll understand why things are happening. We've got a lot of little kind of back and forth goings on here. NASDAQ tried to pierce the low but couldn't complete. That could be problematic, especially if the shorts took the risk. Ooh, and now hang on now. Looks like they may be re-upping above that last swing, possibly trying to drive their average up first.
France's Finance Minister Le Maire says we will take any opportunity to speed debt reduction.
This would be their break-even point if they were trying to sell in this area. There's that little bit of bouncing. So we're seeing a bit of liquidation going on here. Just kind of analyzing this zone at the moment. Man, what is this S&P candle? It's just the candles just keep getting bigger and bigger, but they're not going anywhere. The same spot. Eventually, it's going to have to move, right? Maybe. Really got to see if the sellers can sweep this back down. I mean, the moving averages haven't even gone into the correct orientation. Sell side's trying to hold, but it's got to have some follow-through. S&P bulls are still trying to maintain that little micro double bottom, previous wick pocket. Tons of support down there. I mean, just look at it. Would you look at that? I mean, technically, it goes all the way down here. It's like a brick wall just sitting there. Sellers are trying to look for some continuation here. The bulls aren't taking it. They're getting caught up. They're directly on top of support, so it's a super gross area, but they're running into some problems. Potentially, so far in the NASDAQ, the market's still pulling back to support. I have to look at it as support because it hasn't broken yet. They kind of pierced it, but we can see the sellers are trying. Can they actually make it happen this time? Very nice bear bar. Oh, very nice bear bar. 16,150s. That's going to be the zone where sellers are going to be looking for the continuation phase back down. It's in a little bit of a difficult spot because of the support. We haven't seen that breakdown move yet. They're trying to get it to break. I love the challenges that the sellers are putting up to the table. The S&P POC shifted down 69.75. Come on, NASDAQ. Drop it through the floor. Can they make it? All those stops are just underneath. They got to apply just a little bit of pressure. Just a little bit. One good thump on the bottom and they're gone. Closed out kind of a gross looking bull bar. It doesn't really prove anything. S&P's got 2.5 minutes left. It's all wick. Come on, NASDAQ. The floor is right there, and it's super slippery. Right down the stairs. Side note, have you seen those videos? Those are hilarious. Maybe not for the people falling, but where they like butter the floor. Oh man. My inner troll. Notice there's still 200 ticks left on this candle. It seems like they're stalling before a pop. Usually they do that before they get a trap going. I'm obviously hoping that it's a long trap for a continuation breakout to the downside, but we haven't seen that snap. This thing is taking forever to complete this last couple hundred ticks. S&P just kind of herky-jerking around the POC.
Deputy Governor Cunliffe says that Brexit has caused some financial services businesses to move to the EU or the US.
Come on, NASDAQ. Come on. Get on down there. Jeez. S&P struggling around the POC as well. Be weary. Like I said, it looks like they're trying to get a trap going. I've got my skeptical eyes on. S&P closes above the POC. NASDAQ, quick snap up. Was that the trap? I thought it was going to be bigger than that. Oh, man. All right, well, had I known that, I would have sold a little bit more into that move. I thought it was going to pop a little further. They haven't gotten the stops yet. They're underneath the low. S&P starting to pressure back down. Come on. Come on. There we go. Okay, come on. A little more. Someone throw the ball. The stops are right there. They're right there. They're so close. There they are. They're so tasty. Nice. Beautiful flush. There we go. Nice little continuation move. I was only able to get the one, but really nice breakout move. Jeez, oh Pete's. Finally. Now, as far as this zone break, this is only the first break. Remember, the first break usually does something like this. Doesn't have to, of course. S&P is trying to... I don't know what the S&P is trying to do. This thing's a mess. This little continuation phase back up, sellers may be trying to get back into. There was also this nice little pocket of wick up in the 150s. Be nice to see if they could reach up at least above that gap. Ooh, I don't want them to close up, though. This might be a strong bull bar. Hang on, back off a little bit, NASDAQ. Come back in a minute. There we go. Okay, now you can go up. You can almost see how everyone's like, whoa, 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 wait a minute, whoa, whoa. Stop it. They kind of had to pump the brakes a little bit there. Nice little rotation phase. Sellers starting to pulse back to the downside. I wanted them to go just a little further up. S&P is still dealing with all this support in the way. NASDAQ's offering up some really nice moves. S&P put like one tick underneath the low. Fantastic. NASDAQ's got a ton of pent-up energy right now. It's just a question as to where it wants to go. There's no real news or anything else that we've got to worry about today. The news calendars are pretty quiet. Anything else today? No, just bill auctions. And OPEC. Constantly. Bitcoin also down to a new low and having a little bit of trouble. Nice little pullback as far as a value perspective is concerned, considering countries and everything are still buying it, but Bitcoin also continues to make lower highs and lower lows perpetually. It hasn't made a new high. It's like the inverse of Ethereum when it was rallying. S&P with a little bit more continuation phasing, but still down into all of this support. And maybe. Right down to the lows. They're trying to break through it. NASDAQ's trying to get the continuation going. Nice bear bar. We're hearing them get hit. Popcorn's a poppin'. Market's still having a little bit of a hard time on the S&P, it seems. The NASDAQ's working through all the support in the 16150s. Finally beginning to transition bearish, though. Full out bearish. Lower lows, lower highs, the whole shebang. We've got the L5 off of the top, so a bounce 5 continuation to the downside might be pretty nice. We already know the bears are in control. That's not what I wanted. I want L2. And before I lose the line, let me make it so I can see it. There we go. This is a breach of the previous support. It's a rotation to the downside for sellers to regain momentum lower. And we're still underneath all of these areas. It appears as though sellers actually are defending, if anything, this previous area, 187.75 or so. S&P with a very nice bear bar to the downside, trying to get things going. But with so much back and forth, it's pretty realistic to assume that it should be able to make it back up to like 69.50. So it makes a bit more sense to look for the fade off of an offset a little bit. See if they can get it to rotate back down from there instead. Might not be able to fill it either. Noting as well, that last close to open was up. They had a gap up, suggesting possible underlying support from the bulls that they're trying to hide. So expecting a deeper inside correction kind of makes sense. That may explain why it's having such a hard time here. NASDAQ trying to wait for the 145s. Man, I am freezing. I literally have a little Bitcoin miner as a heater at my feet. It's not enough. Add another GPU to this bad boy, kick the heat up. I'm sure GPUs have not come down in price at all. Sellers looking for an opportunity on a better price. Just haven't been offered it yet. All right. Yeah, Dave, I see the question too, so don't worry. I'm hoping you're still here at least. I'll get the questions covered for you. You had your layout on the chart for the short side, but you had at the same time one for the long side, almost as if the short side was the large term and the long as the short term. You speak of using them both at the same time. Thinking about it, I could see using long-term and short. Yeah, and that's the cool thing about using these levels. You know, an L1 or an L5 or something to the downside could very easily have an inside pullback that's an L1 up. If you're familiar with Elliott Wave, it's similar, in fact, where you can subdivide them. When you zoom in, you can break them down even further. That's just kind of how they operate. When the pattern's there, the pattern's there, just like Elliott Wave or any other pattern. So the way that I like using them is starting off first on the larger time frame, on the 60-minute chart or something along those lines, so that I can get my bearings. You know, looking at the 60-minute chart, that gives me the ability to kind of stand on, like we kind of jokingly call the cliff, right? Stand on the cliff and look down and say, all right, well, you know, where's the water flowing? Looks like it's going that way. We don't have to spend a whole lot of time on it, but just enough time to figure out what's going on. And if there's a bear cycle or a bull cycle, then we kind of know where that's going to take place. But when we zoom in, while the market's working its way towards that area, that doesn't mean that there can't be other zones along the way. So I like trying to keep track of if there is a major one happening, I want to see where that is. But until we get there, you got to remember that it's kind of off the table, right? It's not gas pedal on until it hits the zone. Because you will find, if you don't think of it that way, you'll find that it kind of impedes your ability to trade a little bit. It's a psychological block that doesn't need to even be there. So just kind of think of it as an on-off switch from the bigger perspective. If we're not in the big zone yet, then it's off. That's kind of the way that I have to think about it. But using them both at the same time is 100% viable, yeah. You know, one of the examples like we were talking about this morning on the 60-minute looking for the upside directional, well, on the upside direction, if we were going along with this continuation, we've got the L4 into L1s, like 1.5 million of them, until they finally get going to the upside. But on this deeper pullback, what really is this? This is just an L1, 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 L2, screams back up to the upside. We know what happens after we have a reset in pattern. It takes a deep dip. When it took a deep dip, it had an ABCD back to an L3. Now, in L3, there's a lot of other levels that are inside here too, but you know, one of the major things that we want to pay attention to is not necessarily, oh, is it going to bounce right there? Because the cool thing is, if it's going to bounce there, we'll have some kind of structure to play with when we zoom in, right? So when we hit this zone, right, if we were to highlight this area, if you will, on the L3, and again, you don't have to know that it bounced there, but what we want to see is how did the market respond to it? So that when we put this, on all charts, and we go into the 15-minute, when we come down into this area, well, it's pretty obvious that something happened there, even if you were showing up to the party over here. You got a nice little wedge pennant breakout formation. It looks like that was about it, though. Hindsight's kind of 20/20 on this one, I guess. It really didn't give you too many other opportunities, but you kind of get the idea. This is a multi-metric area where even though there is a long zone here, don't forget that the shorts are still trying to work on their cycle. So they've got the L5s and then into the L2s. And then from that L2, guess what they're cycling off of? They're cycling off the L1s because they're trying to get the cycle to keep going, the trend. So, you know, just because this is a 60-minute zone of support, this is where they kind of went, oh, wait a minute, whose army's bigger now? Oh, wait a minute. You know, this is where they slammed the first time together and they realized their casualties, and then they realized that the longs had a bigger army. That's how it worked. And we reverse back out of there. So, hopefully that kind of clarifies the multi-fractal purpose of them. Big zone of interest. Oof, I wasn't paying attention. Nice little zone of interest in the L2. Nice. Looking for a continuation phase to the downside.
Bank of England's Bailey adds, I don't think that we are in a situation where there is stress around the corner for the markets due to Omicron.
And the S&P also hitting major zones of support. Okay. The S&P just swept straight down into the target. I didn't even have a chance to think about that one. As far as the NASDAQ on this rotation, lower, back down through the L2. I'll reduce a little bit to draw my average up in a more favorable location. And that way, yeah, that puts my scalp right in the inside of the L2. Nice. What is your opinion on the 5-minute charts? Let me see here. Hang on one second. NASDAQ's still just kind of herky-jerking around a little bit. Trying to figure out what it wants to do with life. College is scary. A lot of bull pressure to the upside is obviously causing some trouble, but is it just me, or is it like the market hits the pause button every once in a while, like it forgot that it was open? It's moving around and then it just stops. I'm going to reduce risk a little bit more because we're continuing the upside ascent. The S&P is still rejecting off of the POC up on the top there, but it doesn't make sense to hold on to risk when they're invalidating the zone a little bit. Yep. Now, as the market comes into this area, if we look at the overall transitional phase between the two, they're trying to jerk around this sort of POC zone that they're now breaking above. The last point of interest that they've kind of left behind is the 66s to 70s. The S&P is trying to get above the POC. I would really like to see it get above the POC first. As far as the reduction of risk, so far it was an okay call, but it hasn't really given me any opportunities to do anything else. Just kind of straight up, straight down. Anyway, let's see here. Oh, gotcha. You want me to take a look at your trades? Yeah, for sure. Give me 1 second, though. Let me finish this one off, and then we'll go into that. Well, I guess it depends on how they want to play this, but I'll take a look at those for you. Next zone of resistance is going to be closer to like the 6650s. So far, it's just been kind of bull bars straight up, so I don't really have any reason to add to the risk. It was just exiting on some of the risk to mitigate some of the loss. Hasn't really done anything else. Wider perspective would be another cycle back to the downside. Sellers still seem like they're trying to hold on to this, but if we look at it from the top down, maybe not inclusive of this previous swing, the balance point's still in the 150s. So if the sellers are going to take it, they have to chop back through. Nice little bear bar, but realistically it's only the first one, so the probability of that actually working is not very high. If it does, it could end up being a V top, and this collapses all the way back down. The 2-to-1 still fits to the bottom. It's to the tick, but... So you're saying there's hope. Obviously, we do know that we're dealing with a broken pattern, so sellers are a bit disappointed regardless. See if we want to get a little bit of a dive down there. This market's jerking around, so we got to do it. We got to approach it a little bit differently here, but... $145, little bit of volatility coming in here, a lot of back and forth. S&P had a nice little fade off the top. The NASDAQ still just kind of playing back and forth a bit. NASDAQ still feels like it's just kind of playing games a little bit. It's like it hasn't decided, do I want to be a V-top? Decisions. Little bit of a POC shift to the downside on this move. Or they're kind of playing back and forth off this zone. Got to play it a little safe. See how they want to play ball here. Ooh, starting to look good. Come on, sellers. Just got to get away from that POC. They'll be all right. The one consideration, of course, that we've got to have is the previous broken L1s who tried to short and got absolutely obliterated. That's going to be a zone of interest that we're going to have to pay attention to. So I'll highlight that now, might as well. There we go. Back down through the POC. Come on, NASDAQ. S&P trying to close down as well. There we go. A little more follow through. Can they finish the job? They're still dealing with this green zone. Man, this area is just such a pain. If we can just get through this. Showtime. S&P trying to close underneath its POC. Rotation back above the POC. Tried to get it off at break even, but it wouldn't fill me on the bid. I'll take that one off there. That allows for a bit more risk tolerance while the market's trying to finagle back and forth around this POC. Still haven't had the slide to the downside. 2-to-1 target still fits to the downside as well, but we might have to hold it until the afternoon even more. S&P's got an inside bear bar. I wonder if they're going to try to get an engulfing candle. If they go above that bear bar, there's 4 minutes left. Go above the bear bar and then tank it right back to the downside. See if they can get it to cycle. And then while I'm waiting, let me get this on there. There we go. All right. So the question was taking a look at some of the trades just to see, you know, how they looked and all of that fun stuff. A little bit of trade review. So the first... Looks like the first one was a short underneath the... I mean, yeah, of course. You know, you've got a really nice continuation of the downside. There hasn't even been a single new high until right there. And then when they challenge the swing, it's a bear bar straight down. Yeah, that's a fantastic entry. Nice little scalp move to the downside. Really hard to argue with. The one consideration, again, is one that we were talking about earlier, in that the earlier shorts, the worst shorts, they were possibly getting out of break even. So, you know, allowing that bull move to take place first and then fail, I think is very important for that one. And there's room for the scalp to work, so it fits. The continuation down, it looks like this was a long. So trying to buy probably before the candle was complete, I would assume. And it likely looked relatively strong at the time until the very end of the candle, where it all collapsed back down. Looks like it was pretty much a break even. This is, you know, one of those caveats of when you're trying to catch a falling knife. When it works out really well. And when it doesn't, you either get out of the way on time or you get your hands a little bit messy. And this one looks like you dodged it pretty nicely. So hard to be too upset with a small little exit if that was a long. Even though, yes, in hindsight, it did go up a little bit further. There's a lot of risk inside of that. The trend overall at the point is obviously down. So with a consideration now, the next time that it goes breaking back above, it looks like it was another long for a break even. Maybe it went up to the target and then pulled back, I'm not sure. But, you know, again, trying to buy this early on into the trend, at least it's giving you some semblance of, you know, some back and forth. You've got something else to work with. Hang on one second. NASDAQ. Zone of resistance is a little further. Can they make it up in the 170s? Not quite. Did they? Oh, they did. That happened so fast. I'm just going to leave it at the 1 for now. If they want to go a little bit further, there's a potential for them to retest the break-evens on this move. A little bit further up. Obviously, my average is way in a different spot now. Somewhere around there. Anyway, so while I'm waiting for that, beyond that, you know, once the market started transitioning a little bit more sideways and showing that they're not getting it going, you know, especially right here where, again, the worst off shorts, the ones who had the worst position price, the worst location and everything, they were finally given a chance to get out of break even. And with 3 candles demonstrating a huge wick there, okay, you know, now you could definitely assume that the longs are probably trying to get in. So going for the longs inside of here, it makes a lot of sense. The same with a continuation phase to the upside, because it's likely at least going to go a little bit further, right? The likelihood of this continuing a bit further is very high, at least up into the resistance zone, which they haven't hit yet. So, you know, at least at that point in time. So looking for a bit more continuation there makes sense. When they start failing back through, I think looking for that next dip does, I mean, it doesn't hurt my feelings, but because it didn't work, I don't know that I would want to look for any more longs. There's a chance that it just keeps collapsing and falling apart. So I like them. A little bit aggressive on trying to pick the bottom, but the stops were really, really small. So, I mean, I think they were managed perfectly. Nice job. Yeah, definitely. All right, 2 o'clock right around the corner, and it looks like I'm going to be sitting in this NASDAQ trade for a little while here. I've got to wrap it up and take care of a few things, and then eventually get the kids from school, I suppose. So I'm going to leave this one going for a little while and see if we can reach out and grab some targets. The 2-to-1 still fits underneath the low, so that's good. We'll see if maybe they can start positioning out of some scalps and playing around with it with better prices too. So they might have an opportunity. Yeah. To drive this up for the scalp. Reach out for the 2-to-1 and the 3-to-1 down at the lows. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Good, good, good. See what the NASDAQ wants to do.
Sources, the UK and the EU are set to push talks on Northern Ireland into 2022.
As far as today is concerned, on all of the setups across the board for the entire day, dollars and cents aside, of course, just looking at the trader's math and making sure that everything has been traded properly. I'm in a trade right now, so these numbers may differ. But at the moment, 62.96% accurate today, 54 total trades. Had a couple scalps. 62.96 minus 100. The 37.04 losers on an average of 25. And the winners on an average of 34 puts us at a pretty solid trader's math today. Largest winner at 158, largest loser at 95. So, I mean, I'm not going to complain. A normal day is like the 600s to 800s, so seeing thousands plus, I'm a happy camper, good enough. We'll see if the NASDAQ can kind of finish this job back to the downside, but I've got to duck out. Hopefully you had a great morning, and hopefully you had a fantastic afternoon as well. The market's been a little bit whippy, and we've definitely got our volatility. Remember, right, we're going into the last week of the year before we go into the holidays, and when the volume dries up more and more, the volatility goes up more and more. There's less to stop big moves from happening, and things get a little bit crazy. So keep your risk in check. Keep yourself safe, because this week might be a slippy one like we've seen so far. We just got to wait and see if they want to finish some of these jobs and span out and keep the risk under check, and we'll be okay. But if I missed any questions, or if there are any questions that you want to send in private, or if there's any trades that you want me to review, or anything else, if you have questions about becoming a member, whatever, you know where to get a hold of me. Feel free to shoot me an email, jhb@ssftg.com. It's also the contact page on the front page of SSFTG, and it also goes over everything else that we have to offer if you have any questions. But that's going to do it. I hope you had a fantastic day. Rest up, and we will see you all tomorrow morning, VIPs. For those of you who are here this afternoon, we'll see you back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And yeah, if you're not on the VIP side of things, if you're on the YouTube members, we'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning too. Otherwise, we'll see the rest of you back tomorrow afternoon. See how this thing wants to do. Enjoy the rest of the day. Rest up. We'll talk to y'all later. Thanks.